I spent the 2 days lounging around the house and walking on the beach. I was being very lazy. On the second day, while I was sitting on the beach admiring the ocean, a dark grey cloud gathered right overhead. By its size and obvious gloominess, I knew it would rain, and when it did, it rained hard like a summer monsoon. Big and warm drops landed all around me, making little explosions in the sand. I stood up and would have gone back home, but I was so wet, I took off my shirt, my sandals, and jumped into the water instead. The drops were so huge they splashed when they hit the water. It looked more like a war zone than rain. Jesse showed up with his boys soon after the rain started falling. I was already in the water, so they took off their shirts and jumped in to join me. We swam halfway to the barrier where a resident pod of dolphins was jumping out of the water. A young female came up and nudged me, trying to play tag with me. I wasn't able to catch her, but the boys, being immortal, had no trouble keeping up. They tagged her, and she came back to tag one of them. All the while, the rain continued to splash in the ocean. I watched the explosions all across the bay. At times, it fell so hard I couldn't see the beach or the retaining wall. We spent at least an hour swimming. The rain didn't let up for another 2 hours, creating several waterfalls on shore. It was times like this I will remember forever. We hiked back to the house for lunch. Jesse and the boys had a gig at the Origins concert hall that night. The Origins concert hall was one of many floating concert halls. There were fantastic neon-lit buildings sitting on a platform and floating in space, each enclosed with a force field that held the air within. Transportation developed a particular vehicle to land on those platforms, called concert vehicles. Each vehicle opened from the front so it could pull up and unload its passengers at the edge of the platform. Jesse asked if I wanted to go. He always asks me when he and the kids are putting on a concert. He told me the boys composed some new music and thought I would like to hear it. And just like him, he always waits until the last minute, never an advanced warning. Of course, I was going, and it was an outstanding concert. I recorded the whole event with my recorder. My recorder was like a thumb drive the size of half a pencil. It can hold up to 25,000 hours of recordings. The recordings sounded like the real thing. It combined with a small earbud which produced a field around your head and sounded like you were right there. It surprised me they allowed me to have one of those little gadgets. If I plundered its technology, I could generate billions back on Earth, but it was not important. I marveled at how well the boys played their instruments. It was all new in my mind. I attended most of Jesse's concerts in the past. This concert was especially exciting because it felt like the first time I have attended. The concert included several musicians, and it was a grand night of music and singing. Thousands attended to watch unique talents play and sing. After the concert, late that night, we stopped at one of the modest restaurants in the hall. I reflected on the music, how impressed I was. We sat around for 2 hours talking. Afterward, we went our separate ways. I returned home and to bed for the night. Before I fell asleep, I thought how much I missed the versions of them that were still back on Earth, wondering if they assumed I was dead. I didn't know what the physical condition of my real body was. I figured since I was going back sometime in the future, my body must be usable. I hope I'm not missing anything, like body parts, when I get back. I climbed back out of bed, as I used to do, and prayed for each one of my kids, and my real body. There would be no sleeping otherwise. Jack came over for coffee and donuts the next morning. He told me that was our normal routine. That made me mad, because now I know he took that maple bar, knowing that it was my favorite donut. He had taken advantage of my condition. I wondered what else he was getting away with, under the circumstances. He said, "We got a lot of work done sitting around this table, early in the morning." Sure, we did. I was a little suspicious about that, but I knew he couldn't lie to me. Well, it didn't matter. He was helping me, and I was grateful for that. As we sat, we began discussing the Immortals, Redeemed. I noticed I had only seen a few of them. Other than my family, the council, the ambassadors from each planet, and a few hundred entrepreneurs, I couldn't think of any others I've seen since arriving in Sierra. believing I would have expected to see millions. I considered my own mortality. I asked, I know I'm mortal. How does that work for me? Well, you won't perish, but because of your status, you are immune to certain things that might kill a normal mortal human being. You're like semi-immortal. If you were fully immortal, you might access elements of immortality you're not allowed to access. What about my real body? Is it functioning? I hesitated. Is it dead? No, of course not. Technically, it's somewhere between a skinned knee and a kuma. You're still alive back in your time, back on the earth, and if you tried hard enough, you can die here, but that would merely deliver you back to earth. So you're safe. Just don't forget, the purpose you are here is to go back and write the story, the diary regarding what you've encountered while here, to ignite a spark of hope for some who have no hope. I feel like I should do more. I should go to work or something. My time here is more like a long vacation. I go sightseeing, and that's it. Yeah, you lazy bum, get to work. That's why you are here. You're an observer. That's why you need to write your story. Just think of it as being a watcher and you are on one big assignment. Okay, to get back on track. What about the immortals? I would have expected to see millions of them. Immortals live in many places throughout the universe, beyond this small patch of space. They aren't subject to the same living conditions mortal men are subject to. A lot of immortals live on the earth devoting their time to doing God's work. Those immortals, who live in places like Sierra, rarely live in normal houses like the ones here, or in Edmonton. A few, like yourself, when you were an immortal, desired the little closets like the one you live in. He smirked. Others, like Rory, don't appreciate living in a house at all. You remember Rory? Vaguely, I vaguely remember him. Sure you do, Jeff. Rory has never lived in a house since the rapture. He was homeless back on the earth. So, I suppose he's used to it. Well, I like my little house on the bay. Some immortals have homes that cover an entire planet, but I know this little house is your favorite one, among the others you have. At that moment, I recalled I had 35 homes. I remembered having that many homes was more for convenience than anything else. As a watcher, when I traveled from place to place, I needed different places to stay. Often, I was in one place or another for extended periods of time. I became tired of the hotels and resorts, so I acquired different pieces of property and had houses built to stay in when I was in the area. Property was free if no one was using it. Jack and my conversation produced a horde of memories. Man, my daydreams were never this elaborate. I could have regarded myself as crazy. Right then, I thought of the cave. What about the cave? I just remembered it. I want to go there. He stood up. Okay, let's go. Right on, lead the way. I wasn't sure where we were going. So, Jack called for transport and provided instructions. We headed straight out the bay. A mile or two from the inlet, Jack brought the craft down to the water, which produced a 50-foot wake, more of a tail following behind us. We continued across the ocean until we arrived at a wall of high cliffs. The wall climbed 400 feet right out of the ocean. We slowed down to where we could watch the ocean waves battering it. It was several miles long in either direction. We continued slowly to the left along the cliffs until we encountered an inlet. The inlet or cove in the wall was 100 feet wide. It extended inland 300 feet where both sides of the wall met one another like a V. Jack turned the craft into the cove. Once inside the cove, he swung to the left and stopped. We were staring directly at the cave. At the base of the cave was a flat stone ledge protruding out 50 feet, and it was 100 feet wide. From the ledge, it tapered down 60 feet, like one side of an ice cream cone. It had a railing on the top which stood 4 feet high. Jack landed on the top. It was a patio as furniture was placed next to several planters containing small trees and bushes. Each strategically placed neatly around the whole patio. The patio was 3 levels, the center was the lowest level. 1/4 of each side was 3 or 4 feet higher than the center. Steps were cut into the stone for access. Even up close, it appeared to be just a cave. That all changed when I entered. It was an actual home. Furniture, lamps, appliances were there, although it had no door at the front, just an open space leading from the kitchen to the patio. It was a French door-size opening in the rock. I turned to look at the patio. The light from the sun was magical when it flowed over the whole of the patio. I didn't notice the moss when we arrived, but from inside it lit up various shades of green as it captured the rays from the sun. I walked back out and leaned over the railing. Both sides of the cliff were overgrown with moss. Small bushes with red and yellow flowers found places within its cracks to grow. I didn't remember or expect this. Jack said, the sun travels overhead just off-center down the middle of the inlet. At mid-morning, it breaks right at the spot where the two walls meet at the back of the inlet. The morning is the most extraordinary time of day with its blend of light and shadow, and the sun only lights this side of the cliffs from morning till evening. The other side remains shaded until sunset, when the sun shines on both sides of the cliffs. It's pretty amazing how that shadow and light work together to make this a wonderful experience throughout the day. I wish I remembered, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. I looked below to see waves from the ocean were tumbling the full length of both rock walls, tossing water high into the air at the back of the cliffs. Jack went inside. He came back 5 minutes later with 2 cups of coffee. We sat at a small table to drink it. Jack, this is such a magnificent place. This morning, our conversation only produced a vague memory of this place. I still don't remember ever staying here. Yeah, I could tell you didn't recognize it by the way you wandered around, like you don't know what to do, and that expression on your face is a dead giveaway. Well, I remember some things, but not the cave itself. Everything here, all you have experienced in Sierra, is from your dreams. Anything that's new is just filler to make this reality make sense. The cave was never a part of my daydreams. Jack took a sip of his coffee. I guess your memories this morning were just some of those fillers. I don't know. I can imagine how it's confusing. A little, but everything seems right. I can't wait until all of this is my true reality. Jeff, I might warn you, nothing is set in stone. No pun intended, nor will anything be the way you dreamed or recall it, or even what you're experiencing now. The adventure you are living here is only one of many possibilities. People and places you see or interact with may or may not end up here. Remember, that's why you need to get the message out. Now, why did he say that? I was enjoying myself. Jack, you are getting on my nerves again. I realize where I'm in the past. I recognize this is my future, and only possible should things go as I hope they would. I let out a moan. I hate mortality. I suspect immortals don't have all the uncomfortable emotions mortals are still dealing with during the millennium. No, they don't. It's tough trying to describe the joy immortals have compared to living as a mortal, and I suspect it's more difficult when you were once an immortal, and now you are not. That isn't a problem for me, because I don't remember being immortal. I remember people, places, and things I did as an immortal, but nothing else. Jack had a definite peace of mind. I wanted the same peace he had. When I counted all the people I wanted to live here with me, I concluded with great sadness that many won't do what was necessary to come live here, if they only knew the truth. I despised the heartache I was feeling. I even became impatient to return to the earth, so I could grab people by the collar, ordering them to wake up. Sierra proved wonderful in every respect, regardless of these moments of stark reality, mortality. I lifted my face to the sun to find consolation there. My adventure was unbelievable but heart-wrenching at the same time. I shifted my face from the sun and said, how do you describe to anyone what heaven is? How do you tell them when such wonderful words don't exist? First, you stop relying on yourself, and let God's Spirit speak through you. God put you here for a reason. He's speaking to you through what you experience here. Is he not? Tell the story. Tell it as best you can. God will do the rest. I know he will. I turned my face back into the sun and listened to the waves crashing below. It seemed the advice Jack gave me was a relief, and now a sense of peace had overtaken me. We sat there for a while longer, drinking our coffee. until I desired something cold to drink as the late morning sun was getting too hot for coffee. I walked inside to see what I could find to drink. While inside, I looked around the cave. The kitchen was to the left of the entrance. As I continued deeper in, I noticed foot-diameter holes drilled into the ceiling all the way to the top of the cliffs. It turns out each hole was drilled into the stone 10 feet with lights inserted to make it appear like sunlight was coming through. They were not on, but their bulbs were visible. I assumed the lights were voice-controlled. "So," I said, "lights." Immediately they came on. As I walked through different rooms, different lights came on as I entered. The cave had a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a living room, and a library. I love libraries. I grabbed a cold soda from the fridge and walked back outside. Homes like this one are usually owned by immortals, and often in places you would not expect. Jack, I know I have at least 35 houses, although I don't remember what most of them look like. Are they all remote like this one? You have a variety of homes, Jeff. Most of them are small compared to other immortal homes, but you are not big on houses. Then, neither are you like Rory. Perhaps, one day I'll try living like Rory, but in the meantime, I like kitchens too much to cook on the street. I could sleep there or anywhere, but I have to have my appliances. You have those needs because you think like a mortal. He laughed. Yes, don't I? I walked back out to the railing to look out at the ocean. Not only was I mortal, but I was also going back to the reality I was living before Sierra, before the tribulation, before the millennium. I was feeling an urgency to go back and tell my story. The story was no longer just my imagination, yet I understood it was not so much the story as it was hope for a better life heaven could provide. The story will be the vehicle for the hope of a better life. No one should miss heaven. I hoped my story would be helpful for someone, anyone. My story was not yet complete. I suspected I'll have many more experiences before I'm sent back. I was confident of that. I looked down to the water below, spit, and tried to keep my eye on it, but it disappeared before I could see it hit the water. Once again, I tried and got the same results. The third time, the wind caught it and it flew back up at me. How gross. Jack wondered if I was getting bored, so he asked, "Are you ready to head back?" "No, I'd like to stay and spend the night." "Well, I need to get back. So, if you would like to stay, please do and enjoy yourself." Jack left, and I stayed behind. I was now relaxed, excited, and finished with all the deep contemplation, at least for the moment. I walked into the library to find a pencil and paper. After doing so, I returned to the patio and took a seat to write everything down. I pulled my little recorder and earbud out of my pocket so I could listen to the concert from last night. The little earbud creates a field around your head. You can walk quite a distance away from the recorder without the sound being distorted or diminished. As I sat, I took off my shirt for a tanning session. I loved feeling the sun against my skin, especially with music blaring. I ran back into the cave to find a pair of sunglasses. After finding them, I returned to the patio and assumed position, flat on my back in the sun. The writing could wait until another time. Later in the afternoon, after I finished the concert again, I called for transport to take me up to the top of the cliffs. The cliffs were the end of an expansive desert. A mountain range filled the horizon, but only sand dunes everywhere else. There was one other mountain which was only 5 miles from where I stood. Otherwise, this place was positively remote. As I walked along, near the cliffs, I came across a small riverbed where the water flowed right over the edge. The river itself cut through the desert like a snake leading up to that lonely mountain. The mountain rose about 3,000 feet straight up from the sand. Clouds covered the top, and I could tell rain was falling down the sides, causing it to glisten as moisture reflected the sunlight. Lower down its sides, great clouds of steam drifted away from the opposing elements of heat and coolness, then were carried away in the conflicting winds they created. I could almost smell the steam as it came near before it scattered and vaporized in the scorching desert right in front of me. I'm sure it was a breath caused by an optical illusion. Nonetheless, it looked mysterious and out of place. The small lazy river it produced ended at a rock retaining wall where the water overflowed, falling to the ocean below. A group of huge lizards was sunbathing on its banks. One appeared to dive over the cliff. I walked over to check it out. Below the cliff was a ledge with an indent shaped like a bowl. It was a deep pool catching the overflowing water before it descended downward. A dozen lizards were in its pool. Several were standing vicariously on the outside edge. It made my knees weak to stand there and watch them. I had to walk away. The river water was fresh, and I took a drink. The water felt and tasted refreshing, cool. While walking along its banks, I noticed a water pump on one side. I assumed the pump was where the cave got its water. As I continued to investigate, I stopped and turned to look at the mountain. At the base of the mountain, I noticed a forest to the right. I called again for transport because I wanted to fly there and see the forest. The sand was too hot to walk that far. The forest cuddled up to the mountain. As I entered the forest, I passed through an invisible force field. When I got out of the craft, I could tell it was much cooler inside the field. The area appeared to be more of a park than a forest as it displayed immaculately manicured trees, gardens, and grass. There were antique park benches placed everywhere, like the ones in the park beside my house. Obviously, someone lived here. I looked up to see if the force field covered the whole forest. I couldn't tell there was a force field from inside. Except for it being cooler inside, I wouldn't have known. I walked over to the base of the mountain. There was a waterfall falling from the top of the mountain. It created a small lake which generated the small river leading towards the cave. Once outside the force field, the small river produced steam which made its way towards the cliffs. The clouds, I saw earlier, above the mountain, looked like a mushroom cap. "Hello, Jeff," someone said behind me. I turned. "Hi, how are you?" It was an old man in his late 60s. He reminded me of a wizard out of a medieval story. His hair was almost white and long, as was his beard. He was thin and wore a long robe falling almost to his feet. "I am wonderful, just wonderful." "Well, I'm sorry. Apparently, you know my name, but I'm at a loss." "Yes, of course, you're the anomaly. I know you well. And your story? I have it written in a manuscript somewhere, although it's still a work in progress. What brings you over this way, young Mr. Flake?" "I saw the forest while standing at the cliffs and came to see it for myself." "Now, who are you?" "Oh, sorry, I'm Arthur William Morris. You and I are all were friends in the past. I'm a resident historian, and this place is where I come to write and create history." At that moment, another middle-aged fellow, who looked like he was from the 1920s, wearing a flat cap, walked up and said, "Hey, Jeff, it's been a while. How are you?" "I'm good, and you?" "I'm fine, just keeping busy." It was odd how old they looked. I couldn't keep from asking, "Why do you guys look so old?" Art answered, "Jeff, this is Amos Monterey Taylor. You don't remember him either, do you?" "I am sorry. I don't remember many people these days." Art turned to Amos and said, "You know his story, we were just going over it last week." "Oh, yes. Well, you know every story differs greatly from the real thing." I asked, "What does that mean?" Amos answered, "Well, it means nothing. Actually, I just forgot about your situation." I didn't question how or what they knew about me. It was clear they knew something about what has happened. In answer to my earlier question, Art replied, "We often take on different appearances, including age, when we're mingling in the past. If we should get our picture taken and that face or personality shows up throughout time, someone will ask questions. So, we mix it up, which helps us to remain incognito. In other words, we like to dress up." Amos just got back from 1920s Earth and hasn't adjusted himself yet. Me, I often look this way when I'm writing, and I have been steady writing for the last 2 days. This is how I see myself when I write. It's a game, a personality to fit me when I'm doing so. Then Amos asked, "Jeff, are you staying at the cave?" Yeah, I was planning to spend the night and head back home tomorrow. Art said, come inside and have some coffee with us. You have time for coffee, right? Of course, I would love to. Their home in the forest was a large red brick mansion with a spacious front porch and big mahogany, vertical plank, front door. We entered a large living room filled end to end with tables, all covered with piles of books on top. Half of the books were open. It appeared someone was reading them all at the same time. On the other side of the tables was an 8-foot by 4-foot mirror. The mirror was displaying several colors like waves of light moving from top to bottom and left to right. To the right of the mirror was a brass and silver panel with levers and knobs attached. It reminded me of something out of an H.G. Wells book, The Time Machine. What's that? I asked. Art answered, that's our transport. We use it to travel to different places back in time. We walked over to the contraption, and Art explained how the levers set the date and time. Then, pointed out how turning one or more knobs determined the time they enter a particular era. It's an old-fashioned gadget, but still an interesting piece of machinery, which makes it fascinating. You know better than anyone, or did rather, that we find it more enjoyable taking the time accomplishing lifelong tasks. You convinced all of Sierra of that in the beginning. That was something I understood but didn't remember. Amos walked over and pushed 2 levers and turned 3 knobs, and it revealed a picture in the mirror. The scene in the mirror didn't look familiar until Amos showed me it was a scene of the Church of God in Ketchikan, Alaska, where I got saved. There I was on my knees praying at the altar. I could hear familiar music in the background as Bob McMillan was singing. I was 22 years old. It was November of 1976. Fascinating, I thought. Then I said, I remember it as if it was yesterday. I remember Pastor Bill White praying with me. That church became my home and remained so for the rest of my life. I left after 10 years, but no matter where else I attended, I could never think of any other place as my home. I turned to Amos. Thank you for showing me that. Art said, let's get some coffee. Thanks, but actually I'm no longer in the mood for coffee. I would have some orange juice if you have it. Otherwise, I'll pass, thank you. Orange juice coming up. As we sat down, another young man joined us. He was as tall as Art, but was twice as heavy, with a military haircut. He just returned from the 1960s. Art introduced him, Jeff. This is Bob, Robert Lyle Harrison. He's also a historian and the last of our group. Then, Art turned to Bob. Jeff has forgotten all about us. He doesn't even remember your birthday. What do you think of that? My birthday, Jeff? How could you? Are you telling me the rumors are true? He demanded. I asked, what? What rumors? The rumors that aliens abducted you, erased your memory, and dumped you off in some lonely field, out back. Is it all true? Hey. Where did you hear about that? He replied, it's all written in the book. Art has been keeping track of you. You may have forgotten us, but we have not forgotten you. I sat wondering if that was a good or a bad thing. I knew they were teasing me and intended it to be light-hearted, but they had me at such a disadvantage. We sat around and talked about the forest, how Art loved the desert and almost beat me to the cave. He said he got the idea the day after I finished it. He wanted to construct one below mine but thought it was too intrusive. The cave was in the perfect spot because of the river, but after he saw the mountain, he constructed the living space, including the large park, here instead. I told them they're welcome to stay there anytime they wanted. They informed me I already told them that. In my current condition, I do that a lot these days. That statement was met with an odd look from all 3 of them. As we talked, curiosity was getting the best of me. Perhaps before, when I was immortal, I would have known all about what these men were doing here, but in my current state, I didn't have a clue. I couldn't resist any longer, so I asked, what exactly do you guys do, and why do you travel back in time? Art answered, we travel back in time to collect things and write about history. We can't change the past, nor can we affect the future once it's past. So, We spend our time going back in history to collect artifacts and bring them back here to put in the museums. Do you remember the Planet Museum? No, I don't. On the Planet Museum is a collection of items from the history of Earth before the millennium. We go back in time and collect everything from toothpicks to ships. We collect things in such a way so we don't disrupt time, precisely at the last moment before the item is discarded. That's when no one will remember them anymore, so there's no effect on Earth's past or future. If we try to remove an item before that moment, we get hot air, and nothing will materialize on this side. That's because the laws of nature prevent us from absconding with items that could have an impact on history or the future. I said, how exciting. Have I done this too? I mean, in the past? Yeah, but mostly, you just asked questions on current projects. I don't think you really wanted to spend your time in the past. Oh. Well, if I went back, I'd probably go back and see what condition my real body was in. I've done that already. When I first heard about what happened to you, I had to check up on you, to see if it was just a rumor. I asked, what did you see, how was I? Art tried to explain, but his language changed to something I didn't recognize, although I did recognize what was happening. Never mind. Just out of curiosity, what are you working on? Well, 3 months ago, Bob started collecting a 1939 Lincoln Town Car. It's taken several trips to several time periods to collect the whole thing. This one was really spread out. Bob said, I just collected the last hubcap this morning and hope to have it restored by next week. I said, sounds like a lot of work. Art answered, there are only 3 of us, and there's too much work for 3 people. So, if you recall, we have an army of 250 companions to help with the work. Art stood up and asked me to follow him. He led me to a back door leading to an elevator. We descended to a massive underground warehouse. It was packed from one end to the other with tables full of different artifacts. Art said, this is our library of important artifacts. He led me to a table with a glass case on top. Enclosed within the case was a manuscript or document. Upon closer inspection, I saw it was the US Constitution. Wow! I was beside myself. Yep, that's one of the original products of the American Constitution. He tried to tell me how he retrieved it. Instead, said something about marbles and the inner circle of a community of proboscis monkeys. Oh great, I thought to myself as I waited for him to finish. Once his language returned, he said, this library is just over 3 million square feet and is full of important artifacts. I looked around to see several companions busy handling other artifacts. What are the companions doing? They are constantly organizing things, which I find annoying because half the time I can't find what I'm looking for. Come with me. I'd like to show you something. You have seen this before, but since you remember nothing, including Bob's birthday, by the way, it's his birthday today. Anyway, follow me. We walked over to a hall and down the hall about 75 feet where it ended at a door. Art opened the door, and we passed through into a dark room. He reached over and flipped a light switch. The room was a big hall full of companion stations. There are 250 stations here for companions to connect into the hive. These companions are our associate helpers. They're fantastic at getting around in the past. Their timing is impeccable. Much better than mine, Amos or Bob's. They don't have problems waiting around for an artifact to reach the point where we can retrieve it. We, humans, are impatient compared to the companions, and we often get into a hurry taking an item before it's ready. These guys are never in a hurry. As you can see, most of the stations are occupied. That's because they remain in status until we need them. Right now, there are only 37 companions in the field. Wow, cool, associates, eh? That was their doing. They wanted the title. We returned to the kitchen where I told Bob, happy birthday. He smiled and said, thank you. Art said, we have another reason for going back. While we're back in these time periods, I, being the writer, collect information on ordinary people and put that information into books. That's often the sad part of what I do. Since I can't change the past or the future, I watch many of those people live unsaved lives. Some are evil, and others are just lost unsuspecting souls who will face a very unhappy end. Although I can say, it's not all bad, as I often come across true believers, and I get to watch them fight the good fight of faith. I'm always impressed with their endurance and bravery. I have met some of them here and have become good friends with several. In case you are wondering, we avoid our own lives in the past. It would be just too heartbreaking to see our loved ones who never trusted Christ. Art looked down as sadness momentarily covered his face. I thought it was impossible for an immortal to feel sadness. I asked, "How is it that made you sad?" He answered, "Well, we or I still have emotions, and sometimes those emotions bring about sadness. I don't dwell on sadness. It goes away as quickly as it comes and is only related to the past. I'm never sad about the present or the future. Anyway, our purpose is to collect everything and every bit of information about the world before the millennium. We have almost covered the whole Planet Museum with our collections. Let me show you something you might find interesting." He said, "Screen," and a screen dropped behind him. "Show me Acquisition 390904. The screen revealed a ship. I couldn't see the name until Art asked to zoom in on the hall. My mouth dropped to my chest. I rubbed my eyes and took a second look. It was the Titanic. I was dumbfounded. I took a drink of my orange juice and slobbered on my shirt. "Are you serious?" "Yep, that's right. It's the Titanic. That was a piece of work collecting it with no one noticing. We had to build a complete replica to replace it, but we did it. It's not the only famous artifact we have collected, but I thought you might like that one. Next, you're going to tell me you have all the space shuttles." No one said anything. I asked, "Okay, why are you collecting artifacts and writing about the history of the world? How is that pertinent today?" Art looked at both Bob and Amos. "It's just a hobby. It's something the three of us wanted to do, and it benefits society. You won't believe the number of people who come to the museums we've built. Also, many of the artifacts are available for purchase and are displayed in many homes throughout the universe. I know I don't remember having gone to the museums in the past, but I will make a point to go in the future." Art stood up and said, "I know you liked the Auto Museum in particular. Would you like to go now?" "That sounds like fun, sure." We went outside and called for transport. We were off to the Planet Museum. Before leaving, Art took me around to the backside of the mountain. "Jeff, do you see the mountains in the distance?" "Do you mean the ones where the clouds are streaming from?" "Yes, those mountains sit in such a way they cause heavy clouds to form between them, and the only outlet points directly to my mountain. That's why you see the long stream of fast-moving clouds ending at this mountain. Once the clouds reach my mountain, they lose their speed and moisture from the heat of the desert, which causes them to drop rain right at the peak. The evaporation of those clouds is why it always rains on top." That was an afternoon science lesson. We left commerce and entered the atmosphere of the Planet Museum, just above a high building. Art landed the craft on its roof. Along the edges of the roof were dozens of large freight elevators. We entered one, and Art pushed a button to take us down to a lower floor. The elevator stopped, and we got out. Right in front of us was that same 1939 Lincoln. Several specials were working on it, restoring it. Behind the vehicle was a busy machine shop where they restored the parts for the different cars they collected. To the left of us was another one of those transport contraptions, only it covered the entire wall. "That's much bigger than the one at your home. Is that for bigger artifacts?" "Yes, we use this one and others like it to bring back artifacts as big as locomotives. There are even bigger ones we use to bring much larger items back, such as a ship like the Titanic." Next, we took the elevator down to a lower floor. "Once there," he said, "this was your favorite floor. Do you remember anything?" "No, and it frustrates me." Once the door to the elevator opened, I saw 1950 and 60 cars as far as I could see. I said nothing. I just looked around. They displayed each vehicle in showroom fashion, some in beach settings, and others in street settings. There were a lot of cars. Art asked, "Do you want to drive one?" "Yes, I do. I would love to." He called for one of the AI on the floor and told him to put the 1953 Corvette on the elevator. He put it on, and we rode down to the first floor. The elevator opened to a track. The grounds surrounding the building were covered with miles of track. I drove the Corvette for 2 hours. It wasn't too fast, but I enjoyed every moment. It was an absolute pleasure to meet the historians. I hoped to spend more time with them in the future. After 2 hours of driving, I got hungry. I was ready to return to the cave. I said so to Art, and we said our goodbyes, and I left.